Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And joining us today is a narrator making their official debut here on the show. Now, this narrator broke onto the scene back in October of 2024 when she landed her first paranormal romance gig, which led straight into a trilogy with her very first author. Her first female main character was bold, magnetic, and unapologetically in charge. She legit made seduction a sport, and she was just lucky enough to have been chosen to voice her. And in her own words, she may have begged the author to let her bring her to life, but that's neither here nor there the point. And narrating her wasn't just fun, it was empowering. Every character has taught her the importance of finding the right balance of rhythm and intonation in her delivery because her power lived not just in what she said, but how she said it. And that dance between precision and vulnerability was what got her hooked on trying to perfect the balance. 10 months later, she's now narrating and producing her 10th title spanning the likes of paranormal romance, romantasy, and erotica. And she's been fortunate to have added even more fierce heroines to her repertoire, even challenging her in such unexpected but beautiful ways. And that was one of the main reasons she started narrating in the first place. He's always been more pragmatic than poetic, logical, composed, and quick to analyze rather than emote. Vulnerability never came naturally to her until she started narrating characters who live inside their longing and feel everything. Giving voice to their desires, their aches, and their power has unlocked a softness within her. And in her own words, she didn't know that is what she needed. And today, that same drive to master her craft has pulled her behind the mic in a new way. She's currently pursuing a diploma in audio engineering to understand not just how to tell a story, but how to build a sound that holds it. She's constantly learning and growing in the space and can't wait to see what the universe leads her next. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, narrator Nora Westfield. Nora, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Awesome, Nora. I'm so excited to have you here. And in case of our viewers asking, where are you calling from on this beautiful day?
I am in Chicago, currently at home. Supposed to be working, but here I am.
Awesome. Awesome, Nora. So this is off camera, but from your bio, you've been working on a slew of stories, and currently you're also working on a new story, which, in your own words, is challenging you in a different way. So, without spoiling too much, what can you tell us about this new project you're working on?
Completely out of my comfort zone and genre, but it's actually a story based in 1952 where
Ooh.
told from the perspective of a 12-year-old boy who's taking a road trip across the country with his family on summer vacation. And
Mm.
each chapter is about a new character or person he meets along the way that impacts him. And told from that youthful perspective, it's really beautiful to see the stories that he makes up about the experiences he has with those people. But the kicker of this project is that it was actually written by one of my family members. Um,
Really?
oh, I know, it was so fun. I went to a family reunion of a branch of my family that I've never
Mhm.
met. I found them through genealogy research. So I kind of
Ooh.
said, well, what better way to jump in and meet you all than to just show up at a family reunion? So when I did, it turns out that there is a published author in the mix. And we got to talking, and I said, I would love to bring voice to your book. And here we are.
Wow,
It's
that
super
is
special.
amazing, Nora. Yeah, that is. That is really, really cool. That it's actually really, really fascinating to work on a story that is again very different outside of your
Mhm.
genre, but also a very personal way because it
Very.
was written by someone in your family, which is incredible. But before we dive deep into the nitty gritty of that project, let's talk a little bit more about you, Nora.
Sure.
So, in your bio, as you said, you kind of jumped into the world of narration back in 2024.
Mhm.
And for some people, that will seem like, wow, very, very quick. But I imagine there were a lot of inroads along the way. So, what would you consider definitively to be your aha moment where you realized that narrating and voiceover work was the right path for you?
For me, the aha moment itself was that point in time when you ask yourself what makes you happy and you don't have an answer. And that's kind of where the journey started for me. And I realized that as I've had accomplishments in my life I'm super proud of, I've done a lot of things, been a lot of places, but I didn't really have an answer to say what makes me happy. So I kind of decided to just flip life on its head. And I picked up and relocated across the country here in Chicago and started over. And I've been building my life over again from the ground up of only things that make me happy. And through that journey, I kind of realized that I needed to find things that utilize my voice so that I can reconnect with it and relearn the power of what it means to have my voice out there in the world. And I kind of stumbled on a TikTok live
Mm.
where somebody just said that they started on a website called LibriVox. And I was like, what's that? So the more I dug into that, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I get to stay at home. I get to record myself and really just have my voice literally out in the world. And it skyrocketed from there. And that's been the journey. But I started on LibriVox recording last July. And by October, I was on ACX and booked my first book.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is insane. That is
Yeah.
insane. But congratulations all around. I mean, that is huge. And also, again, for a bio, 10th books and possibly even more along the way. That is incredible. So I'm also very curious. So it seems to me that you have your preferred genres to work in, but I'm wondering, are those also the preferred genres that you like to read also in your spare time? Were you always a creative person, or did this creativity sort of come about later around the time when you started, you know, building your arsenal as a narrator?
I've always been a creative, but never did anything with it in terms of
Mm,
pursuing it as anything more than just a fleeting hobby. Even from dancing as a kid or dancing in the club or, doing anything I could think of that was just a creative expression, the answer is yes. I did like 1 year of theater in high school, but quickly pivoted away from that too. And it just became a lifelong journey of satisfying both my 9 to 5 professional side
mm-hmm,
and filtering that outside of my creative side because I have both. So it's always been a part of me, even with drawing, painting, you name it. Like there's a lot of things I do in terms of that creative space, but it's just kind of coming into fruition now in a very different way because it's that journey of self expression, being out in the world, but being driven by text that others have written. And
mm,
it's almost putting me in a position to say it's no longer just about me. It's also about what authors are pushing me to become that I
right.
didn't know was going to be my journey. So, all of the things that got me there is one thing. Reading, in addition to that, I used to read a lot of books in the paranormal romance genre about kind of people who have heightened senses and a little bit more energy and sensitivity than the normal average Joe, and writing stories about how what happens when those characters come together in a romantic way and the way those words were written, like that blew me away. And I was like, oh yes. So I very much read what I narrate straight through. You name it, any kind of romance, dark romance, erotica, I read them all, which is why I really like narrating them.
Nice. All right. So now let's look into the behind the scenes, behind the booth, so to speak. So when you begin working on a new project, do you have a ritual or routine that gets you in the mood? I know that from the narrators I've interviewed thus far, some either do vocal exercises to get their voice ready, some either do, simple things around the house to make sure they're busy and active. Do you have a ritual or routine for you before you go into your recording booth?
I have a check-in because my headspace is really important to me when I narrate. And
Right.
it's not necessarily for me. And I'm fortunate enough that I do one project at a time at my own pace. And I don't always have to force myself to get in there to record. I have a schedule, but I always pad in times that I know I'm going to need to reset. But for me, the headspace is first and foremost. I need to be in the moment. I need to feel vulnerable. I need to allow that vulnerability to happen while I'm reading. I can't have something else on my mind that's dragging me away from what I need to perform because that doesn't come naturally to me. So that takes some practice. So that's first and foremost. And I started doing vocal therapy this year. And that is now becoming part of my routine as I continue to learn how to properly breathe and use my voice and relax the muscles. So that's part of my newly created routine to go in there and do some lip trills and really massage underneath my tongue and get everything relaxed. So it's becoming a routine.
Awesome. Okay. Fascinating. So sorry. This actually is a fan question from one of my viewers who asks, whenever you're working on a new project, how do you develop the voice for each character to feel authentic yet compelling?
What a great question. A lot of times, what I will audition for are things that I don't even blink an eye or think twice at. I can hear the character clear as day in my head. And those are the ones I usually target where I don't second guess it or I don't have to think about what I can do to sound this way or that. Granted, that's not always the case because authors very much also have something in mind that you have to become. But
That
for
is true.
me, like it's usually a win-win when I work together with projects because I have a vision, they have a vision, we talk through it, and we're usually in the same place unless it's accents because I don't think in accents. So that's always an added twist. But yeah, sometimes I definitely question if this is coming across the same way if it's not natural for me. And I think that's pretty
Mm,
normal. Natural is easy because it's just you. But when you're putting on a character voice and even making choices about where to land in your register and how long you can sustain that kind of tone based on how long that character appears in the book, those are all decisions that I definitely struggle with making and hope that they stick.
yes, absolutely. Very, very true. So now, another question that I always like asking my narrators on the show is probably the most important question, which is breaking the myths about the narrating world and the voiceover world, because I know a lot of people have some myths about it. But there's also some stereotypes that, well, I shouldn't say stereotypes. There are other sides of the coin where people think, oh, narration is, easy or stuff like that. It is not. From the people that I've interviewed, it is not an easy thing. So for you, Nora, when you began narrating back in 2024, what was some of the most surprising aspects of the industry that really took you by surprise?
I mean, I think that point exactly. Because when I started talking about getting into this, I had friends say, "Oh, so you want to be an actor?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want to be an actor. I just want to narrate audiobooks." And that line came up immediately about are they the same? Are they different? And how so? And
Mm-hmm.
I still don't have that answer because there's so many nuances on both sides, but there's
Yes.
also a lot of parallels and crossover. So I think it's got to be a unique experience for each person to decide what they want to be and how they deem their craft in the
Mm-hmm.
world, right? Like, I think even from a resume perspective, if you're going for audiobooks, it might be easier to put in your resume that you are an audiobook narrator and vice versa. If you're going into commercial work, it might be helpful to have that tag of voiceover and voice actor in a different way. So I think it definitely reflects what you want, not necessarily who you are and what you're doing.
Very true. Very, very true. So now let's talk about, well, in addition to your first project, as well as your current project, let's sort of look at the timeline. So when you began this journey of yours, ultimately, what has been your goal as a narrator working with authors of different genres, with different readerships, and also the promise you're making to them and to yourself?
So it's it's an interesting balance to do that, right? Because those promises could be very different. A promise to myself is always staying true to my why. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And why am I doing this character? But at the same time, I have to ask that same question of the author and deliver that. And that becomes the challenge of trying to find that middle ground so that it's still authentic, but
Yeah.
still answering the why for both sides.
Yes, very true. Very, very true. So now that I can talk about the creation of the voices. So when you work on a character, what have you found to be, I don't want to say the easiest, but sorry, helpful things that you've gotten from authors that have pushed you in the right direction to, develop the voices? Maybe it's like accent types or inspirations from other characters. What have helped you sort of craft the voices for the numerous books you've been a part of?
So for me, I read the manuscript end to end after the audition, and I jot down what I got for each character about what popped into my head. And that's usually what I start with when engaging with the author to say, okay, let's make sure that we're in the same place is in terms of where we think this character's coming from, what they're bringing to the story, and what kind of delivery they have, what their personality is. So I start with something so that we're building on top of that, not necessarily me starting with a blank slate and having somebody just craft exactly what they want it to be, because I think it needs to be somewhere in the middle, because my job is to also add something to the words and in the delivery. So I think the creative process is coming together to both define that. But I usually do start with something instead of just asking, you tell me.
Excellent. Okay. All right. And just like authors, sometimes we are very hesitant to let people know what we're working on. And sometimes we'll tell them either in the beginning or the very end. For you, Nora, when did you tell your family and friends that you were embarking on this new journey of yours?
They don't know.
Really?
Yeah, they don't know, but that's a choice that I had to make, because I am still very much tied to corporate America. So I keep this very private, and I do not have crossover between the two. So for me, it's also a personal journey, and that's just for me, myself, and that's how I like to keep it.
Wow. Well, I'm just gonna say, well, people are going to know now when this gets uploaded. They're going to they're going to figure out, but wow, that is crazy. That is insane. And that also kind of goes, almost what you just said, that, I've had a lot of authors and narrators who have been very similar, that, they work, their 9 to 5, their corporate job, and they don't tell their friends and family. And, that is a choice. That is a personal choice. But man, that is insane. But sometimes it does give you, I guess, a little bit of freedom in the sense that you are kind of like unknown, and you don't have to, in some sense, possibly worry about like that sense of anxiety or unnecessary pressure. But down the road, Nor, do you think that possibly you will like maybe sprinkle some discussions that you are working possibly in the world of narration, possibly down the road?
Potentially, I mean, I think it depends on where the journey takes me. Um, it's not that I don't want them to know, it's more that I don't need them to.
Mm.
I think there's a difference for me personally speaking. I don't come from a family of creatives, so there's not much appreciation or support, unfortunately, in anything I've done. So I don't really look to that avenue to get validation or support. And friends, same thing. They may be colleagues from past jobs I've had who also don't have creative passions. So it's a big juxtaposition between 9 to 5 life and my creative side. So I don't always look to that in terms of being something that I want to share if they wouldn't understand what it is. I mean, I've had even random strangers where I've talked about it and I had to explain what an audiobook was. So sometimes it's just better to keep it with me on my own journey.
See that point. And you are right. Sometimes we don't have to let people know from the get-go. They can possibly learn on their own that, this is what I am doing. And I think that is, very, very true for everybody, especially in the creative world.
Mm.
And kind of going back to the behind the scenes of narration, this actually is a two-parter fan question, which has probably
Okay.
been my favorite to ask narrators. So, Nora, you have done a lot of projects, different genres, playing different characters all around. What has been your favorite scene or moment to narrate, as well as the most challenging scene or moment to narrate?
Okay, so favorite scene I think was just in my first book where I played Nina in my paranormal romance. And it was conceptually one scene through most of the book because the character was limited to an asylum. So there wasn't much
Ooh.
else you could do or go in terms of that. So it was very much about those moments where, for lack of a better description, break someone, and
Ah,
it's pushing and pushing, but doing it sometimes in malice, but it's just sometimes pushing someone to let go in a lot of senses. And I found that really empowering. Not necessarily the malice side of it, but if
right,
I look beneath why we were having those dialogues and what the text was saying, I could absolutely kind of relate that to other areas in life. Um, Leaning into the unknown, leaning into uncomfortable situations, not
Mhm.
letting yourself seek happiness because you feel some sort of way. You need to kind of be like, no, no, maybe I shouldn't, the second guessing. So for me, that's definitely a favorite. Um,
Right.
the one that challenged me the most was definitely in Legacy of the Divine. There were so many scenes that challenged me in that book, written by Megan Blood. Whew. I can't go into a lot of detail, but there are scenes where she kind of has the moments where she realized all the people she trusted the most have betrayed her. Um,
Ooh,
those are really hard scenes to put myself in and express.
right.
And that was probably over and over again in that 15 and a half hour book, the most challenging that I've had to do because there were a lot of real tears. There were a lot of real moments where the anger of gritted teeth was very authentic and
Right.
really me.
All right. Okay. Fascinating. And kind of in this headspace, just like authors, where we have our author's block, where it's not, there are some days where we can't get our words down onto page or anything like that. I imagine there may be something for narrators where you can't get the voice right, or the flow is not going the way you want it, or you are really, really struggling to, convey a certain emotion. So I'm curious, Nora, for you, have you ever had a moment of a narrator's block, and how did you overcome it?
I walk away because those moments are often, but that's the best advice. It's I walk away, right? Like I
Mhm.
I create my schedule so that there are pieces of contributing to the project that I can do at any given time. So if I'm having days where I'm tripping over words or my head's just not in it, I pivot. And that could be to prepping the next 6 chapters, or that could be editing or mastering or laying character dialogue from previous chapters. There's always something I can do to move the project forward, even if it's not me behind the mic narrating in that moment. So I try to make sure that I have ways to navigate around that so that it doesn't impact my delivery or my deadlines.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this actually kind of goes into a fan question, which is, do you have a outline in terms of what projects you will do, like a spreadsheet, or do you, I guess it's almost kind of way of what the fan is asking, as like sporadic moments, or it's like, oh, if you're in like a good mood and you want to record a few lines for a book, even if though it's not on your schedule, you will do it. So are you more of an outliner or a sporadic pantser when it comes to narration?
I'm definitely one project at a time, very focused and very intentional with how I pack my schedule, because I'm also a full-time student in addition to a full-time 9 to 5 job. So I have to be very careful with my free time. I don't have a lot of it. So I step very lightly into projects because I don't want to overwhelm myself and I don't want to take away from quality. I
Right.
make sure that I can focus and that those steps where I have to take away from the microphone don't impact that. So I don't do a lot of forward looking. I'm very much in the present.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this kind of goes into another question of, being a creator in the digital age.
Mm.
For you, Nora, again, from your bio, you began in October of last year, and you've been steadily building your brand, building your presence, which I think is incredible. But I think you will also agree that while social media is a good tool for creators to use, it's also a double-edged sword, because it can be very nasty and very, very cruel. And I've had a lot of people on the show, from editors, authors, and narrators, talk about the other side of social media when it comes to, negative critiques, harsh reviews, and so forth. And that can be very detrimental to a person's overall well-being. So for you, Nora, throughout your journey, how do you handle negative feedbacks and critiques, as well as imposter syndrome and anxiety? And what has disciplined you to give out the best performance you can give to an author working on their book?
I can say the discipline is mute everything, mute notifications, mute all the discords, mute, because it's so distracting and can absolutely be detrimental.
Mhm.
I see both sides in the pros and cons, and to call it a necessary evil, I'm not really sure. It is what it is. It's part of society, so it's a choice still, though, of how much I want to depend on it, where I want it to lead me as its own tool, how much I depend and rely on it, and what
Mhm.
I take out of it. If it brings me connection to like-minded people and fellow narrators where I can create community, fantastic. Love that. If it becomes something that really doesn't make me feel good because I'm on my happy journey, I
Mhm.
immediately address it and kind of silence it, put it in the background, and make sure that it's not a driving force of what I'm doing, because I always have to come back to the why. Listen, I doom scroll like the best of them, and sometimes that's quite detrimental, but it's really about my why. I don't want to necessarily follow templates that I see others, kind of going through the motions. My journey is unique to me
Mm.
and it's really personal. And as long as I stay true to the why I'm doing it, hopefully it keeps me in a balanced place with social media, but it is what it is. I don't always
Yeah,
practice what I preach.
that is very true. That is very true. And this kind of leads into a fun, reflective question, which I love to hear your thoughts on, Nora. And that is, of course, this discussion of whether we are in a golden age, an Iron Age or a Dark Age? And some context behind this question. So, I've been doing the show now for about 6, 7 years. I've interviewed a lot of authors, narrators, and the people in the field of academia. And when specifically talking with authors, narrators, and editors in the publishing industry, a majority of them began around the 2020s during the height of the COVID lockdowns and the restrictions. And from these discussions, I came to the conclusion that those 4 years really became a breeding ground for new talent. And as soon as the floodgates opened, new voices entered the industry, which I absolutely love. But with that said, there has been this debate of which, because of these new voices, are we in a golden age? Some say that we are. Some say that we are actually in an iron age where there's a stronger foundation, not as shiny as gold, but still just as powerful. But some have gone even further and said we're in a dark age and referring to AI slowly entering the publishing industry. Authors using AI to write books within a week and just mass produce them. And of course, specifically for narrators, AI entering companies and companies using AI to do narration as opposed to allowing voice actors to really do auditions to showcase their talent. So for you, Nora, from your perspective and from your journey thus far, what are your thoughts on this? Are we in a golden age or an iron age, a dark age, or are we sort of a mix of all three?
I mean, I would say, as much as I believe history repeats itself, that we're in a new age.
Hmm.
I don't think we know how to navigate the age that we're in. I think, to your point, what happened in those 4 years post COVID has redefined all of the things, right? Like, I feel
Right.
we're very much in uncharted territory. Society has pivoted in ways we didn't think we would. People are still responding from trying to come from where we were in that 4 year period. And
Yes.
I think we're still defining what age we're in and trying to understand how we move forward. And I also think, to your second point about AI in the space, I think, again, like, while opinions are definitely sometimes black and white, sometimes in the middle, I also don't think we have a way to define what use we have for AI yet either, because it's still such uncharted territory. There are very strong opinions on both sides of that
Yes.
spectrum, but there's also a human element that comes into play with all things. Humans perceive things very differently. We have very
Mhm.
unique emotions that are going to sway our views from one side to the other at any given point in time. Life experience matters when it comes to these kinds of things. It's very fluid in terms of learning and growing and understanding that human behavior is a big part of it too.
Yes, very, very true. But my favorite comment about, the use of AI, asking AI to write or to narrate for you is like asking an alcoholic seventh grader to do the work for you. It's not going to be the best. It's going to be messy, and you're going to end up doing it yourself. And then you're going to make the realization you should have written the work from the beginning, because that's ultimately the truth with AI.
Hmm.
When you have a program write a book for you, you're just editing it. You're not writing it. And also, perhaps you also agree with this statement, Nora, is that what AI has done is that it mass produces a false sense of creativity,
Hmm.
especially using probably the most current example of the book that was on Amazon. It was pulled from the shelves because the final page had a tagline written by AI to match the style of, I think it was Tom Clancy or somebody.
Hmm.
That was at the final page of the book. And it was like, oh, no, pull it, pull it. and that book was pulled from the shelf, and that is just so, so sad. But it is a reality that, exists in the industry. And, that is, the business mindset, which is, ever changing. And speaking of business, that's a perfect segue into this portion of the interview, the business side of being a narrator. Now, Nora, again, from your bio, you are still, and also in your own words, still very new to the industry of narration. But I'm very curious, from where you are right now on your journey, is there anything that you would have done differently in terms of launching your career?
No, I have no regrets. Um, Maybe lessons learned, but no regrets. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it was important for me to take the steps that I did because it gives me perspective. And that's one thing that I make sure as a person that I always have. I
Yeah.
I build foundations first within myself to have a really good handle on what I'm embarking on, what information that I have, what information I still need to obtain in order to make informed decisions. But I often include wide lenses so that I have the right perspective. I like to really kind of do research before I do anything. That just tickles my brain. I love to know all the things before I do things because it helps me stay informed. But
Right.
information is power, right? So for me, it's just an unending opportunity to learn. So anybody's journey should be just as it is, and you get to choose what direction it goes in, what you want to learn, and how you want to pivot. So I wouldn't do anything different.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Now, also, this also I think is a very true one, especially for narrators who narrate in erotica. And I've asked even a lot of authors this question too. Do you have different pen names for the different genres of books that you narrate? And I've noticed that some narrators do have this again to, dissociate themselves from, one set of genre to another. And also, some also work, corporate jobs and want to hide their identity.
Mhm.
So, for you as a narrator, do you have different aliases for the different genres of books that you narrate?
Nora is the one that I use as a pseudonym, but I created that with the intention of knowing exactly what I was going to narrate with that pseudonym.
Ah,
So I knew the path I was going down. I didn't fall into it. So I started with Nora and I knew what genres Nora was going to do. So I do have others, but I don't use them because I'm still on the same path with what I chose to do from the get go.
all right. And kind of adding on to that, more of an opinion question. Do you think that in some cases that narrators should probably make an alias or a pseudonym if they want to work in different genres? Let's say they have their preferred genre, but they also realize the market of another genre that is, really, really popular. Let's say romance, fantasy, or erotica, but also want to keep the two separate. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's it's a unique personal decision, right? Like
Mhm.
people's comfort levels and reasons for doing so are very different. Very,
Yes.
very different, right? Like most of them maybe aren't market driven. Most of them might be very personal to their unique life experiences, what they're willing
Mhm.
to put out there, what they're willing not to. Um, yes, corporate America is the reason why I have one, right? Like
Ah,
that needs to say separate, period. I follow a very strict code of ethics policy that would need to keep it separate. But, everybody has reasons. And I think it's really about what you're comfortable with. I don't think there's a problem with not having one. I think some people realize maybe shit, I should have had one from the beginning. I wish I would have done it differently. But again, everybody navigates this their own unique way. So I don't know. I don't have a say either way. I mean, if somebody came to me and said, I won't work with you because you've done erotica, I'm very firm in my choices and I was very intentional with those decisions. So
mm.
that's not something that I would have regret over or feel like that was a lost business opportunity. For me, that's just a difference that I have to recognize, respect, and move on from. So
Yes.
that wouldn't sway me either way.
Very true. And this actually kind of leads to another question, which I also think also falls into the world of corporate America, and that is the power of saying no. And
Hmm.
especially in narration. Talked to a lot of narrators on this question, and I think of the many things they love to share with other people who want to get into this industry, it's understanding that power, which is the power to say no. And what I mean by that is, of course, as you know, people just starting off in their creative journeys in the publishing industry, we want to do, so many things all at once, but we have to have a firm stance of you saying, no, I can't do everything at once, or I can't take on so many projects. I have to keep myself disciplined. On the other side, and this is specifically for narrators, is when an author approaches you to uh record for their book. And there are multiple factors that could play into the decision, but the ones that I think are probably two of the most important is coming to the conclusion of whether or not you are the right narrator
Hmm.
for the book, and also on a more personal level, if you feel comfortable narrating this book. Because I've talked with good friends of mine who have given instances where they've read a book and realized I can't read this. Not in the sense that, I'm not the right person for this, but personally, I'm not reading or narrating this book. I'm terribly sorry. So, Nora, in your opinion, how important is it to really stress that to other narrators that they do have this power to say no and not feel a sense of guilt because of it?
It's the most important thing, period. that that is absolutely what people need to keep in mind, like foregoing all of your boundaries and all of your reasons and comforts, like that doesn't bring joy to anyone. And that isn't something I would ever tell anyone to bend on. Saying no is hard enough, right?
Yeah.
Like avoiding guilt and feeling shameful and what if and should I, could I, didn't I, why, that can just be so detrimental to our mental health if you live in that constant state of second guessing. So even having enough to say no for whatever reason is so important. It's so
Yes.
important because it really helps you stand on your own 2 feet in this space. Be you in all of your beautiful ways, whether you like it or not, or, it's just who you are. And that authenticity is what empowers people to say no.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And another fan question, which probably, and again, one of my favorites for, the business side, which is, you know, for you, Nora, as the fan says, how do you create a story that is both gripping and yet appeals to the five senses, that immerses the viewer and listener?
I am obsessed with trying to find that balance. I love it. And that's what I do this for. Like trying to make sure that when I'm reading something, even if it's not a personal experience I've had, every piece of what I do should impact the listener. The
Mm,
the pace, the tone, the range of voice, the softness or the intonation or the power of even where I put my tongue in my mouth when I'm speaking. All of those things should evoke emotion if the scene calls for it, obviously. But that is such a beautiful thing to try and learn and undertake the responsibility to deliver. I love that. That's fun.
mm. Awesome. Awesome. And another fan question, which is also probably a very true one to talk about in the business side, which is Nora. I am a huge reader and a possible author down the road. Fingers crossed for this viewer. And I've realized that writing in my preferred genre, I've realized there is a certain expectation to follow in terms of my author voice. And I am very curious. As a narrator, do you run across the same thing where, in this case of romance fantasy, there is a certain expectation that you have to uphold, even if you're not trying to imitate another narrator or another style of speaking for that book?
Yes. there's there's always going to be things that people say, this is the way, right? Like, this is the path to success, follow me. And that works, right? Like, it's tried and tested, and it is what it is. There are success models that exist. And again, it depends on your why. If you're purely looking for marketing towards success or finding your bottom line, you follow the mold to get you where you want to go because that's your why. Um, if it doesn't feel instinctively you to do that because your why, in terms of why you're doing this, is different, then you owe it to yourself not to jump on that path. You know, my advice will always be to carve your own niche, make your own path, let the universe tell you where you should go. If
Yeah,
it's true, it will unfold all of the things that you are supposed to have in this life. And leaning in has gotten me to the most beautiful places I never thought I would be within myself. And that is because I did it my way and I just leaned into things that didn't feel necessarily as the right way. And I'm still doing that.
very true. Very, very true. I also think you talk about, as you said, carving your own path.
Hmm.
What I've also found very true as an independent creator is the connections we make along the way, which are vital as independent creators, and especially for narrators. I had one person say that when they started off as a narrator, they didn't know what kind of mic to get or how to soundproof their studio, or what kind of recording software to put on their computer or anything like that. And it's been, some hit and misses along the way, but that's life. There's always going to be hiccups along the way. So for you, Nora, from a business mindset and a corporate mindset, how important is it to really build connections regardless of one's industry? And are there any specific people you like to give a personal shout out to who have helped you on your journey?
I will split that answer into two parts. The technical one first. All of the
Mhm.
things you said about equipment and stumbling through to find your brands is exactly why I put myself back in school. There are so many things and toys out there. It's almost impossible to just take someone else's advice and just say, okay, well, I'm going to do the same thing. To start, absolutely, by all means, try them all. But for me, I love the science behind the things. I want to know why one mic is going to serve me differently than the narrator next to me. I want to know
Mhm.
why this interface is going to allow me to do things that I didn't know before. And I am sure as shit going to learn as many DAWs as I possibly can because I want to understand why I'm touching the buttons. I want to know how to just adjust a tiny bit here, but know that I have to offset it there. I want to know the physics, the science, and the math behind it because that makes me happy. And that's something I'm learning that makes me happy and pursuing it. So that's that answer. In terms of community, there are definitely a select few that are important for me in different ways. I know you've had Daphne Winters on here, and
Yes.
she is my favorite. So her and I connected at a book event, and it's just been the most beautiful friendship unfolding. And we've developed friendships in real life. So we spend time together, even outside of all of it, and just kind of take time away as friends. And that is a beautiful thing to experience. And she's my rock, and I'm super thankful for her. In other avenues, there are there are people that make me laugh on the regular, and I am such a girl who loves to laugh. So if you can make me laugh, we're friends. But so Tokia Carter, she and I spent some time just getting to know each other on her TikTok lives, and what a beautiful soul. She makes me laugh hysterically. And I love that. So she, to me, is definitely part of a community that lifts me up. And the same thing with Shane Martinez and Elizabeth Knight. Like, they're some of my favorites on socials.
Mhm.
Their posts always make me laugh, and I love engaging with them because we have very similar senses of humor. And that's really important. So I think each of them supports me in different ways, whether they know it or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Nora. And yeah, shout out to Daphne. She's been super incredible, super amazing. I've had a privilege of working with her twice
Nice.
now. She is so sweet, so very kind. And
Yeah.
also Damien Knight. For some reason, my mind was going to Daphne Knight. And I was like, no, that's not her last name. It's Daphne Winters. But because those two work together so
True.
much, it's just insane. And of course, Luke Bromley, Heather Daniel, Brittany Rice,
Yeah.
Lauren Beck, and so many more talented people in the industry. And also Amber, cannot forget
Hmm.
Amber. She
Yep.
is really incredible. And all these amazing people have been so amazing to work with in some shape or form. And so many more that I'm so excited to have on the show in their very own interviews.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's actually funny that you actually brought up Daphne. This actually is a very specific fan question, which someone actually sent to me earlier today to ask just you, Nora. So, do you have a favorite or funny narrator moment, possibly working with a fellow narrator, whether it's a recording booth moment or maybe a real life moment?
Just a funny story.
Like funny story, funny situation or encounter, just anything like that.
I will share this one because it still makes Daphne and I both laugh.
All
When
right.
we were at a book event, and you know how in hotels every floor looks exactly the same. It's the same layout. The
Yes.
only thing that's different is the number on your door, if you even have that. And we were at a book event, and we were inside the room just chit chatting away, and we heard somebody trying to get in our room. And right, I know your face. It's so funny, but I tell you, it is funny. Um, it was just one of those moments where you're like, wait a second, is that what's happening? Is that our door? So we were like looking through the peephole and we're trying to figure out who these people are. And we opened the door and it was two authors. And they really thought that it was their room, but it was exactly the same layout across the other side of the floor. So they simply turned the other way off the elevator and were so trying to get in. And then we decided to have fun with it instead of just awkwardly being like, sorry, you're in the wrong place. Like, we totally opened the door, like, surprise. And they were like, what the fuck? So it was just hysterical from where Daphne and I were behind the door to being like, let's have fun with this. But it was funny for the rest of the event when we saw those two people. It was very much like, haha, hey, remember us? Kee.
I could definitely see that happening with you guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. That is insane. But that's some of them. That was funny moments, and I've had some similar with other authors at other book events. I haven't been able to attend yet as a vendor, but I have met colleagues there who it's just been always nice to meet and chat, just catch up and just see what's new and just
Mhm.
you know catching up for a long time because I'm sure in some cases those are some like few examples of meeting your fellow colleagues in person at those events, which is so cool. And this actually leads into the last question, Nora, which I'm going to work it in a way almost like a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
So let's say you are at a book festival
Okay.
and you are hosting a seminar slash workshop. And in that seminar, you have a full house of aspiring narrators, people who have worked in radio, people who specialize in sound design, and possibly a few authors sprinkled throughout. Now,
Okay.
there are numerous topics to talk about in that seminar, numerous ones that I'm sure you could talk for hours and hours. But in that pool of topics to discuss and share, what is the one topic you would love to discuss with this group that would also be seen as a pearl of wisdom?
I think to answer that simply, it's sharing my story. And to me, the one thing that brings that room of different people together from walks of life is the human experience. It's the one thing that we don't always remember when we're
Mm,
doing the creative process, is that the person doing the creating matters and their stories matter, even if it matches the one that's on page, on paper in front of them, or, whatever they're designing with sound. For me, that opportunity to connect as a human with other humans by sharing my story um, would be really important for me in that position in front of a room, right? Like,
right.
that's a level of vulnerability. It's a way to connect. It's a way for people to recognize maybe parts of themselves that they wish somebody else brought to light, or feeling comforted, that somebody else gets them. There's
Mm,
no better feeling when you feel seen and when you feel heard. And if I can give that to others, even if it's not through narration itself, but just being me and giving someone else a chance to feel seen and heard, that's power.
awesome, Nora. Very true. Very, very true. And to fully cap this incredible interview, here is the final fan question. And
Okay.
this fan actually had they actually watched your reels from your Instagram, and they said, Nora, you seem to be a person that is genuinely passionate about the stories that you work on. I absolutely love the snippets that you shared with us on social media. So, to all the viewers on the show and possibly on Instagram, what is it that you want people to take away from all the performances that you have done thus far?
That there's a part of me in everything that's out there, including the social media posts that I make. Um, I I love doing teasers. It's one of the favorite things that I get to do when the project is done, is not necessarily just showcase the voices I brought to it, but to display it in a way that just gives it its due course, right? Like, to me,
Mhm.
there's something really powerful about even taking it one step further and creating magic in video content. And I've always been, again, part of my creative side. I used to have a travel content page where I just put my journeys into little mini movies. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I like snipping and clipping and editing and all the apps. I love spending hours doing a 10-second clip. I love it. And they make me so happy. But everything I do is a piece of me in some way, shape, or form.
That's amazing, Nora. That is incredible. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude this amazing narrator interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And again, thanking Nora for making her debut on the show. Now, Nora, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out? And for the books you've worked on, where can people go and find those? And if they want to reach out and work with you on a project down the road, where can they do so?
So I am Nora B. Narrates on all platforms. I am predominantly on TikTok. I'm trying to give Insta a little more love, but I'm most active on TikTok. If authors want to reach out, DM me on any platforms. Also active on Threads, and now they have DMs as well. So open to any of those places.
Awesome. Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video. Thank everyone for joining us again for another amazing interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Nora. We wish her the very best on her journey into the world of narration. And if you're an author and want to work with Nora on a project of yours, or projects if it's a series, make sure to go to those links down below and reach out to her and get the ball rolling. And until next time, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below to stay up to date with all new materials, all new episodes, and more. And as always, the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all in the next episode.